Welcome to the Art and Soul Podcast. I'm Alicia, your fellow dreamer and guide on this path of healing. This podcast is our sanctuary, a place where artists, creatives, and sensitive souls like you and me can come to recharge and find inspiration. You'll find tips and tools to help you on your awakening journey. Let's dive deep and discover the magic inside of us. Hello, and thank you for joining me again this week. I'm so happy you're here. This week, I was feeling inspired to discuss anxiety and navigating anxiety as a creative person. Part of the reason that I was inspired to do this is because I went and I saw the new Inside Out 2 movie, which, as many of you probably already know, there is a new emotion of anxiety in the movie, and it did really inspire me to talk a little bit about my own experience with anxiety. And I've also noticed that the conversation has grown in the last 5 or so years around the topic of anxiety, especially having to do with creatives and artists. And so I kind of wanted to give you my take on it from an energetic perspective as both an artist and creative myself. Anxiety was something I didn't really experience, or at least I didn't know that I experienced growing up. I think some of my shyness and some of my timidity was attributed to anxiety and also to being just more introverted in general and misunderstood and all of that. But anxiety, the way that I feel it today, didn't really come up for me until I was living in LA. And part of the reason, I think, is because the energy in LA is very anxiety-ridden in general. So many people that live there struggle with anxiety, and part of it is because a symptom of loneliness is anxiety. And it's really bizarre because when you have anxiety, a lot of times you don't want to spend time with other people. Anxiety oftentimes comes out as a social anxiety or a disinterest in other people or a need to be alone and be by yourself. And at the same time, anxiety really is a symptom of this deeper longing for community, for belonging, and for this knowingness that you are enough and you are not alone and you are not different than everyone else. Now, of course, we can't resolve anxiety to just that one need of belonging. But at the same time, when it really boils down to it, anxiety usually appears because of this feeling of not belonging or being different. When I was in LA, I started having anxiety when I would go to acting classes where I felt like I was totally isolated and no one understood me, no one was on my team, everyone there was in competition with me, and I was in competition with myself. I was in an energy of over-criticizing myself and over-criticizing others, which really kept me in this place of not being good enough and always measuring up or trying to measure up to others. It really feels to me, and what I've found in sessions with my clients as well, is that anxiety is caused by this energetic imbalance inside your field. There are a few reasons for this, so we're kind of going to go into that, but in the same way that being stuck is an imbalance in your energy field, so is anxiety, so is depression, so are all of these emotions that we as creatives and just beings struggle with on a regular basis. So if you do find yourself in an anxious place pretty often, just know that it doesn't have to be forever. It's just currently, right now, how your body is responding to an imbalance in your energy field. If you're listening to this podcast, no doubt you have had anxiety or you know what anxiety feels like, but just so we're all aware, anxiety is this emotion that signals that there's danger or threat to us, to our energy, to our field, and so it prompts us to take some sort of action to ensure our safety. When it becomes a problem, it's an excessive or persistent emotion that interferes with a person's daily life. So obviously there are physical symptoms attached to this, increased heart rate, sweating, shortness of breath, nausea, feeling like the world is kind of closing in on you, dizziness, restlessness, intense fear, intense dread about something. It can also really fog your memory, cause memory problems, and cause you to think about the worst possible outcomes. Now, there really isn't a difference in terms of feelings between general anxiety and anxiety specific to creatives and artists and fielders like us, except for the fact that we feel on a deep level. If you're listening to my podcast, most likely it's because you also are very empathetic, you're a feeler, you're sensitive like I am. And on an energetic level, part of the reason that we struggle with anxiety as people like that is because there is too much energy permeating our field that's A, either not our own, or B, our own but not being released. So we're going to get into that a little bit more. But in terms of feelings, in terms of expression, in terms of the way it's felt, of course, anxiety just manifests the way that anxiety manifests for everyone. The problem, though, for us creatives is that a lot of times this anxiety will hinder our projects or hinder our creative expression in some way, whether that's not putting anything out into the world at all, or whether it's overanalyzing, perfectionism, over-criticizing our work, or never feeling good enough as an artist. In some way or another, it's affecting our voice and our truth and what we were made to give to the world. So like I said, when I was in LA, I struggled with anxiety not only in social situations, when I would go to acting class, when I would have a meeting with an agent, all of that stuff, which is normal to feel nervous about, but it was like another level past just that nervousness. It was over-obsessing about it. It was thinking about the worst possible outcome instead of the best possible outcome. And I began to train my brain, unknowingly, I began to train my brain to believe the worst possible outcome, which I believe is a huge reason for the way that my acting career went. We haven't talked about this much yet on the podcast, but there were so many instances in my acting career where I was so close to booking the job, but I didn't, and for very bizarre reasons. Like one time, my phone just wasn't working for 6 hours one day, and I didn't realize I had 7 or 8 missed calls from a casting director who wanted to put me on a show, but had to go with someone else because I wasn't responding. Weird, bizarre instances like that I attribute to A, the fact that it wasn't my time, and also B, my belief system about myself. We can absolutely get deeper into that, into manifesting into the subconscious mind and attracting things into your life at another time. But for the most part, anxiety was running my story. It was running my life. It was present in all of the projects I did. It was even the catalyst for some of the projects I did, which is so unfortunate. When you're creating things out of fear or need or desperation or anxiety, it's never coming from that voice of truth inside of you, from that need to truly express and from that place of real authenticity. If you did see the movie Inside Out, you would see that all of the ideas that the character anxiety came up with to solve the problem were never out of a place of groundedness or truth or authenticity. They were always out of a place of fear, and they never manifested something that was true to the character. And to be honest, when I was going through this in LA, I didn't really have a ton of coping mechanisms for my anxiety. And I think a lot of people don't. There are lists of things that I could give you that would help you during a panic attack or would help you when you're having anxiety about a project. But at the end of the day, if you don't want to go to the root and you don't want to work on why you have that anxiety in the first place, then we're just putting a Band-Aid on everything. And that's what I was doing for so long. The interesting thing is I never worked specifically with my anxiety. when I was working on myself, when I was meditating, when I was doing all of this energy work to try to get to the root of everything and to try to find my real self and allow that self to emerge, I never even came up against anxiety itself. It was always something deeper. And ultimately, when I addressed the fact that I was fearful of being misunderstood and I was fearful of being my true self, that's when the anxiety went away. Now, I'm not saying I don't ever have moments of anxiety or I don't pick up on other people's anxiety occasionally when I'm in the room with them, but it's not rooted deep inside of me anymore to the point that it's running and controlling my subconscious mind, which controls my life. You see, anxiety, it really stems from this fear of allowing your true self to emerge and allowing yourself to be witnessed by others. If you think about moments when you don't have anxiety, usually it's moments when you're totally comfortable in your environment and you're totally comfortable with being seen. So whether that is just by yourself on your own or whether it's with another person that you really, really trust. And again, I'm not saying that this is the only reason for having anxiety. Of course, there are many others. And this doesn't discount any kind of trauma or any kind of PTSD or emotional or physical experience that people have had that have caused anxiety in their life. That's a different thing. And that's something that is important as well to get to the root of and to begin to release from an energetic perspective. But for a lot of people, and a lot of people in our culture right now, we're afraid of being seen for who we really are. We're afraid that we might not fit in. Social media has made our culture such that it has to be black and white. You have to be on this side or that side of whatever it is, politics, religion, social issues. But in reality, that's not how we are as humans. We aren't just all one way or another. There is nuance to every emotion, to every experience, and to every perspective. And we're all coming to the table with different perspectives and different experiences that are all valid and valuable. And sometimes we aren't listening to others' perspectives and others' experiences, and that's why we've created this divide in our culture and our society. And that's why our anxiety is on such high alert, because we just want to belong. And we just want people to know that we're a good person and that we're trying and that we're worth something. So when we hold ourselves back, that's when we trap ourselves in our own energy. And this energy is just spinning and spinning and spinning in our field, and it can't get out. And our body and our mind and our spirit want to be released. I read something recently that was really interesting to me. For so long in the energetic community and also the spiritual community, people have talked about the frequency of different emotions, right? So each emotion that you feel vibrates with a certain frequency. That's just scientific fact. It's why when someone feels sad and you're around them, you can feel that sadness in your own field. That frequency resonates with something in your own field and reminds you of the sadness you've felt before. It's what empathy is. So all of our emotions have different frequencies. And shame and guilt are among the lowest frequencies, which means they're the biggest waves. They're the slowest vibration, okay? So as we move up the scale, there are different emotions like grief and frustration and anger and boredom, and contentment, and hopefulness, and optimism, and peace. And for so long, everybody said that the top emotion, the highest vibration of any vibration was love, vibrating at the highest frequency, moving at the fastest speed, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, of course, God is love, feels good to be loved. But recently, we found out that it is not the emotion with the highest frequency. The emotion with the highest frequency is authenticity. Authenticity trumps love. So being the most yourself you can be is being the most aligned possible. It's also more loving to yourself to be authentic than to just love and be a people pleaser and love for the sake of love. It's more true and it's higher vibrationally to be authentic, to be yourself. And I wonder if it's because there is really no one like you. You are the only you. I am the only me. And there's a reason we're all here. Yeah, we're here to love each other. We're here to be in relationship with each other and to create. But each of us has something so unique to bring in love and creation. And so when we hold ourselves back from that, we trap our own energy. We make ourselves stuck in a loop, in a cycle, and we start to have feelings of anxiety because our energy is trapped. And it's so great now that we have so many resources around anxiety. It's so fantastic that people are talking about mental health and about seeking professional help for their anxiety and that it's so normalized. All of that is so beautiful and so important. If you haven't already and you struggle with anxiety, please seek some professional mental help with that. But let's also talk about the things that you can do. Like I said, part of this anxiety is this need to release energy. So when we talked about that feeling of stuckness, we talked about what it means to release energy. The same is true with anxiety. So when you're feeling anxious, the worst thing you can do is just sit there in that anxious energy and allow your mind to continue to roll on and give you all the what ifs and the worst possible case scenarios. The best thing you can do is pull that energy out of your mind and back into your body. So there are lots of techniques that therapists will give you for this. And if you Google, how to deal with anxiety, you'll come up with a list of 10 things that are like hug yourself, breathe, all sorts of things like that. But also, I want to say that just doing something to get in your body on a regular basis is so important to keep yourself from getting that anxiety attack in the first place. Keeping yourself moving, dancing, walking, running, doing yoga, doing some physical activity that you enjoy. I know that I am a spiritual guide and an energy healer, but to me, it's all so connected. Body, mind, and spirit, and you will never hear me tell you to do one without doing the other. So if you're having trouble mentally and emotionally, you better get in your physical body. You better work through that in your physical body because the problem is you've got too much energy in your head. So the more you can ground, the more you can bring that energy into your body and start to move your body and expel some of that energy, the better your mental and emotional life is going to be. So some practices that really have been effective for me are running, yoga, dance, breath work, and even meditation. Now, meditation, I wouldn't necessarily recommend when your mind is already spinning, but meditation is a great tool to practice the way that I talked about it in the last podcast episode, where you're doing it on a regular and consistent basis. To me, meditation is not the tool that you use in a moment of crisis unless you're already practiced at meditation. Meditation is something you do so that your body doesn't go into crisis, okay? Breath work is similar to me. Although you can take deep breaths in a moment of crisis and it does bring your body from that overstimulated state, stress state, to that relaxed rest and digest parasympathetic state. However, the reason for practicing breath work, in my opinion, is so that you work with your energy and you move your energy enough that it doesn't cause anxiety attacks and panic attacks. But again, it can be utilized during those moments. And of course, again, I'm going to reiterate, I'm not a doctor, I am not a therapist, I just work with energy. So if you are having panic attacks and all of that, please seek professional advice, please. But these are just methods that have worked for me. Now, I want to talk to those of you that are going through an awakening or an ego death. If you're going through an ego death, you probably know it. But if you don't, some of the signs of going through an ego death are questioning everything you used to believe in, a general loss of your felt identity. So feeling detached from all of the things you used to believe about yourself and all of the things people used to say about who you are, even your role in society, any labels that you used to give yourself. If you're losing a sense of time in terms of like past, present, future, or really feeling like you only exist in the present moment and you're not sure how to deal with that, that's definitely a sign of an ego death. If you're experiencing intense, super intense emotions, more than normal to the point where like you're almost throwing temper tantrums, or the emotions are so extreme you feel almost crazy, that is another sign of an ego death. And again, like I said, how you perceive reality. a lot of times will shift or change, and you'll start to look at the world and the way that the world works and systems that are in place and all of that, and you'll suddenly just think none of it makes any sense, and you'll start to perceive it in a different way. Another thing is that you will feel detached from your life and your material possessions and the way that you are experiencing life and this reality. And then you might be questioning the nature of reality itself. You might be questioning what consciousness is, or any other kind of deep spiritual questions like who is God or is God real and all of that. If all of that is kind of happening at once, you are going through an ego death, if you didn't know. And the reason that I bring that up is because when you're going through an ego death, there is a feeling of a self-identity crisis. And when this is happening, it's really difficult to be your authentic self because you don't know who that is yet. You're breaking down the barriers of what your authentic self used to be, or breaking down all of what people told you that you were, and learning and finding who you really are. And so a lot of times during that, there can be a lot of anxiety because it's really scary to feel like you don't have an identity. And it's quite impossible to live in authenticity when you don't know what that is for you. So if you are going through that, I just want you to know the only way out is through. Keep going. You've got it. Truly, you do. Just keep looking, keep searching, keep going deep within yourself, keep releasing those emotions, keep asking the questions, and you will come out on the other side. But there might be some anxiety as you're going through it, and that's totally normal. And again, if that anxiety gets to a point that it becomes unbearable, please get some help, get someone to talk to who either has been through this or who's qualified to lead you through this. Another experience that a lot of people have with anxiety is this physical connection with anxiety. And this is really important to talk about from an energetic perspective too. When you're anxious, of course, you have all of these physiological responses, but some people are going around with like low-grade anxiety all the time and are always feeling nauseous or their stomach's really upset all the time. I was one of those people. My stomach would just be upset all the time at different events, family events, social events. I mean, to the point where I couldn't eat at Christmas or weddings or whatever because it was too much on my system. There's an energetic reason for this. Chinese medicine talks about how emotions are connected to different spaces in our body. Some of you might already know, for example, anger really resides in the liver. And I feel like that's the one that people know about a lot, but it isn't just anger. Other emotions reside in different places in the body. I heard once that it's actually because different organs create the frequency that creates those emotions. I kind of don't really think that has any scientific backing, but it has been shown that this is true about different organs being connected to different emotions in general. So anxiety is connected to the stomach. The funny thing about this to me is that it also reminds me of the gut-brain connection. If you don't know what that is, it is this concept where the good bacteria in your gut microbiome have almost like a brain-like quality that connects with your intuition. So when you feel in your gut that you shouldn't do something, it has to do with like the health of your microbiome. And the reason is because of hormones and neurotransmitters and the way that your nervous system operates, but essentially it is the communication between your gastrointestinal tract and your brain. So the first thing with this is that this means that our diet affects our emotions. This may not be an easy thing to hear for some of you, but you will notice if you take a look at your body and you take a look at the times that you're experiencing anxiety, look at what you've been eating, look at what you've been consuming, look at what you've been putting into your energy. All food is energy and it all has a different vibration, so that's a really important component here. And consumption doesn't just go for food. What kinds of TV shows are you consuming? What kinds of energy are you allowing into your system on a daily basis? And secondly, from an energetic perspective, when you think about anxiety in your abdomen, your stomach or your colon or wherever, and you think about it energetically sitting there all the time, influencing your energy, influencing the frequency, then you're not going to be able to have a true and authentic gut reaction. Your gut reaction is going to have a lens of anxiety at all times. And the communication with your brain is going to be disrupted by that anxiety energetically. And as we know, our energy directly relates to our nervous system. So it's all kind of this endless loop when you've got that emotion of anxiety just sitting in your energy. So not only does it cloud your view, but it keeps you from taking action. And that's one of the things about anxiety, right? It gives you all of these possible outcomes. And at the end of the day, sometimes it paralyzes you. It keeps you from moving forward. It keeps you from doing the things you want to do in your life because of your fear and your anxiety. And from an energetic perspective, our action comes from that space. It comes from the solar plexus, which is the energy center right above your belly button. It's the energy center that's in control of a lot of those organs. And so if that space is clogged up with anxiety, then you're not able to move forward, take that next step to achieve your goals, to achieve your dreams, and to even have a sense of power and empowerment within yourself. So a lot of times, if you are living in a state of anxiety, energetically, the thing to work on is that sense of empowerment. How can you feel more empowered? What are the things you can do? And that's one of those places that it might be good to get with an energy healer or get with a coach of some kind that can help you determine how to feel empowered and how to unblock that part of your energy. Now, as a creative person, you can channel your anxiety into your creation. I don't necessarily recommend this as a tool for always, but if you are in a space of healing and still having a lot of that anxiety filling your field on a regular basis, physical activity is a way to move it through, as I said, but so is creativity. And part of the reason is because creativity pulls you out of that left side of your brain. It pulls you out of that critical thinking side of your brain. If you can really get into a creative groove, it allows your right side of your brain to turn on, which is, again, that side that is more associated with the subconscious and with inspiration rather than the critical, logical side. So if you can turn that side on, sometimes it quiets down that left brain. But then you've got to find balance because at times it is that need to create that can create the anxiety. So with all things, it's important to have this awareness of what is really serving you, what is feeding that anxiety, and what is feeding peace. At the end of the day, I'll always say healing is just really learning how to look at yourself and observe what's actually going on and then releasing it. Because so often we think we're having anxiety for one reason, but ultimately, there's something else going on altogether, and it's way deep down, or it's just that we haven't taken the time to really look at ourselves. And also, sometimes it's that you don't know that you can get better. It's possible for you to get better. It's possible for you to change your energy. Sometimes it's the unexpressed creative energy that causes the anxiety. This actually happened for me because for so long I was waiting for someone to give me permission to start creating and to tell me what it was or how to start creating some of the things that I felt deep inside of me. It's like my energy knew that I needed to birth something, but my mind kept getting in the way and being like, well, you don't know exactly what it is, or you have to wait for this or that. And so it felt like all of this energy was just bottled up inside of me. And after a while, it was just bottled up for so long that it caused this anxiety in my life and this fear that I would never, ever be able to release it, or that all the things I was meant to share with the world were never going to come out. And so if you're in that space, that probably is where a lot of your anxiety is coming from. And you do just need to start creating, just taking that next step. Even if the creation doesn't make sense yet, even if what you're making isn't what you ultimately want to be doing or making or sharing, it's still important to let some of that energy move through you and allow inspiration to move through. Another thing I want to talk about is recognizing if the anxiety you're feeling is actually your own emotion. Because there are so many of us, sensitive, empathetic, creative people, that go around all the time thinking that emotions that we've absorbed from other people are our own. If you're a creative listening to this podcast, chances are you have an empathetic, sensitive side to you. And if that's true, then a good portion of the energy that you feel on a regular basis is actually absorbed from other people. It took me literal years of my life to understand this and to realize that not everything I feel is my own. When you realize that, you start to have this awareness in different social circumstances, and you start to pick up on the fact that, oh, hey, that person is actually feeling really insecure, and that's what I'm feeling, is their insecurity. Or that person over there is starting to feel really sad, and I'm not sad, I'm just picking up on their sadness. As a spiritual and creative being, if both of those things are part of who you are, then I guarantee you're dealing with this. The cool thing is that empathy is a huge, huge gift, and so is your sensitivity. The fact that you are able to perceive what other people are feeling and to know how that feels and to resonate with that is so incredibly powerful. The issue is that most people don't know what to do with it, or they don't even know that they're experiencing other people's emotions. One of the key ways to tell if it's someone else's emotion and not your own is if it comes out of nowhere, totally out of the blue. You're just in a social situation or whatever, and all of a sudden you start feeling this really intense emotion that is so seemingly random. Sometimes it can be tricky though, because if it is an emotion that you feel on a regular basis or that you resonate with, you have to begin to distinguish if it is yours or someone else's by the circumstances and the environment. But like I said, if you were feeling in a really good mood, you were feeling pretty confident, and then you showed up to this event and all of a sudden you feel super insecure or you feel really sad or super overwhelmed, chances are you are picking up on someone else's energy. So if you are feeling that, I do want to say just awareness is the first step, and you're doing great. As you start to pick apart the pieces of who you are and all of the habits and thoughts and emotions that are your own, you'll start to realize what are not yours. Again, meditation is so good for this, but also just journaling and just a general awareness of figuring out when you're carrying around other people's junk. Part of this just comes with years and years of practice and awareness and acknowledgement that it's happening, because for so long, you probably didn't know it was happening. Now you know it's happening. So when you go into social situations, when you are in a friend group or in a relationship or having a discussion with someone, even a boss or a coworker, and you start to feel some way, and you're like, where did this come from? Maybe now you'll have the thought, oh, I think maybe I'm resonating with something in the other person. Maybe I'm picking up someone else's emotions. And eventually you'll start to learn what to do with that. And that is going to be huge for your anxiety. Because as you start to learn what to do with it, you start to realize that it's not your responsibility to carry around other people's emotions. It can be your choice, and you start to become really grounded in what your own emotional habits and patterns are, and start to know how to release them for yourself. The more you do this kind of work, the more you look at yourself spiritually and energetically, you'll be able to start to do this. Now, I do want to give a little plug and say that soon I am going to be releasing this workbook that struggle with separating their own energy from other people's energy, or just have never known how to do that or have never had any experience doing that. So it's going to be a workbook that has guided meditations that actually give you energy protection. So if you are that person, I definitely recommend getting this when it comes out. It'll probably be in the next month or so. And you can utilize it when you're going into social situations that you feel anxious about right now because you don't know how to not take on other people's energy. Eventually, you're going to learn these techniques and you're going to be able to go in social situations like no problem. But for now, I will say, if you can get comfortable with a grounding technique of some kind, I have several resources for that already, but grounding yourself into your body before you go into any social situation is really, really going to help your energy stand firm and not absorb all of the energy in the room. And then if it does absorb any of the energy, your body is going to know how to release that if it's grounded. If it's not grounded and your energy is just kind of floating outside your body, which happens to a lot of us, then your body is not able to release that energy. And again, it shows up as anxiety and it shows up as this like kind of chaotic energy in your field. Something else that needs to be noted when we're talking about anxiety is the fact that anxiety for some of you has become a survival pattern or a protective mechanism. And this was really apparent in the movie Inside Out 2. I really loved the character of Anxiety because it was really clear that the entire time she was just trying to protect the main character, Riley. And this is so true of many parts of you, many parts of yourself, your fear, your anger, your anxiety, all of that are parts of you that are trying to protect you at your core. It's a survival pattern that you've developed for protection. And the problem with anxiety and the trouble with anxiety is that if it has become a survival pattern, your mind thinks you want to stop being anxious or you want to get rid of this anxiety, but your body thinks that it's saving you. And so this is where, again, meditation is going to become really important because you have to somehow explain to your mind, to your body, to the subconscious part of you that runs your life. You have to explain to that part that you no longer need that anxiety for protection. But your body's not going to believe that unless you actually don't need it. So we have to implement other strategies in your life that are going to keep you regulated and keep you at peace so that you don't need that anxiety. Like I said, part of that is energy work and part of that is your own energy work as well as getting energy work from a healer. The crazy part too about having this anxiety as a protector is that usually it's protecting these vulnerable parts of you that need to be witnessed. They need to be seen, they need to be experienced, and they need to be healed for your growth. So while the anxiety thinks that it's protecting you, it's really keeping you from growth. Now the question is, how do we get those vulnerable parts of ourselves seen? And that's where I go back to getting some energy work, getting a coach or a therapist, or going deep inside yourself in meditation. In this place also is where we have to talk about taking radical responsibility for yourself and your energy. Over and over, you will hear me say that nothing will change if you don't change it. You can ask everyone in your life to help you. You can complain to your partner, your roommate, your parents, your friends. You can yell at God, but nothing will change unless you take responsibility for your life and for your energy. And that includes these survival patterns and even, like we talked about last week in the meditation episode, these emotional addictions. When we're addicted to the frequency of these emotions and the hormones that they release, we have to accept the fact that we have an addiction to that response and take ourselves out of that victim mentality that anxiety just happens to me. It might, but it might have to do with some of these root issues like survival patterns and emotional addictions. And those are possible to change. I would love to answer any questions you have about anxiety, creativity, and how they go together if you have any. But for now, I'm going to leave you with a list of some tips and some tangible things you can do to deal with your anxiety. But like I said, at the core of it, you're going to want to get to the energy behind it all. You're going to want to find your true self underneath everything and allow that to emerge and be witnessed and be seen by you and other people. So here are some of the physical actions you can take, okay? You can take some herbs and teas like chamomile or lavender can be used as like a tea or an essential oil. Ashwagandha is also a great one for helping with stress and anxiety. Passion flower is a really great tea if you can't sleep. So if you have anxiety at night and your mind is just spinning, try some passion flower tea. Again, because of that gut-brain connection, the health of your gut microbiome is really going to help your mood and help any anxiety you have. So taking probiotics or eating foods that have probiotics like sauerkraut or kimchi, those types of foods are going to help that gut microbiome and help with that anxiety. Magnesium is also really important for anxiety, so eating like leafy greens, nuts, seeds, those help to calm your nervous system, or you can even take a magnesium supplement or a mineral supplement. I'll mention it again, regular exercise is going to be really helpful, like walking, running, swimming, whatever you like to do that reduces stress. It can be anything. Honestly, sometimes when me or my husband are in a bad mood, we will just put on music in our living room and dance for 5 minutes, even if we don't want to do it. It loosens up your energy and it gets it moving, and it also just reduces stress. The music, the fun, the playfulness of it. I know sometimes when you are in an extreme state, that's really hard to do, but if you have someone else that you can do that with, it is so helpful. Just be goofy, be silly, have a little bit of fun. We sometimes take healing and all of this very seriously, and it doesn't have to be so serious. Sometimes it can just be fun and it can just be simple. Another helpful activity, of course, is meditation and also breathing exercises or breath work. I am going to be putting some more breath work on my paid membership very soon as well. My husband is a breathwork facilitator, so he is making us some videos and some recordings for the membership. So look forward to that, but also there's so many on YouTube or whatever that you can find and do that are 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever you want. And then lastly, any grounding techniques are going to be so important. Again, you can do that by just spending time in nature. You can get your feet in the dirt, your hands in the dirt or the sand. You can plant flowers, or you can garden, or just sit outside on the ground. Or you can do grounding visualization techniques. I'm sure there are some of those also on YouTube, but I have some available for you as well. So if you'd like that, please reach out, let me know, or check it out on my website. And that's it. Ultimately, what we want to do is just bring you back in your body and start to move your energy. When you're trapped up in your head, when you've got too much awareness of how you're not being authentic or you're not being yourself or you can't do it, can't seem to move it, that's when we bring you back down into your body, bring that energy back down, really just settle it in your system and stop the mind loop that starts happening. I do want to reiterate too that this podcast is not an end-all be-all resource for you in terms of why you have anxiety or how to heal it. I am not a therapist. This is just my experience and what I've noticed energetically in my clients as far as patterns when they hold anxiety in their field, and some resources and tools that have helped me and have helped them to come out of an anxious state. And healing gets to be simple, and it gets to be what we make it. Sometimes these problems feel so big and so outside of ourselves. So just remember that you can take it one step at a time, and it can be slow, it can be simple, and it can be gentle. We're all just here learning and growing together. As always, if you need help doing that, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to work with you, more than happy to help. If that feels like too much for you, please join the membership. There's so many resources in there, and we would love to have you in that space. Otherwise, thank you so much. Good luck with your healing journey, and I will see you next week on the podcast.